I'm super excited for you to meet today's guest. She is a freaking powerhouse, amazing woman, and she has really made a name for herself as an expert in growing small businesses. Her name is Stacy Tuschl. Stacy started her own business at the age of 18 in her parents' backyard and turned that company into a multi-million-dollar business that she still runs today. How freaking cool is that? And she's gonna tell that story in the beginning of the episode. I'm excited for you to hear it. And in addition to being a small business growth coach, Stacy is a best-selling author, founder of the Foot Traffic Formula, where she helps small businesses around the world get more customers in the door, more profit in their pocket, and more happiness in their homes. I am really excited about our topic today because for any of you ladies that struggle with getting it all done, experience overwhelm, stress, anxiety from time to time, we are going to go in on that and how to optimize your time to be more efficient, to get rid of that stress and overwhelm, because ain't nobody have time for that in 2021. And we're excited to share the tips and tools and strategies that you can implement starting today that will support you in creating higher productivity and lower stress. So without further ado, let's dive into it. All right, Stacy, I am super excited to jam out with you on this episode. The more I learned about you, the more excited I got to jam out with you on here. So thank you so much for coming on and giving up your time and energy to the audience today.
Yeah, well, Ashley, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat and just see where the conversation takes us.
Yeah, so I would like to start. I know exactly where I'd like to start with you because I heard a little story of your backyard business backstory, if you will. And I thought that was so cool. So would you grace the audience with this story as well?
Yeah, so I know lots of entrepreneurs have like the lemonade stand story where they started it when they were 12. And my backyard business story is my real business that I still have today. So it's usually interesting for people to hear that I still own it. So what happened was I was a dancer in high school. And when I was graduating from school, then going to college, I knew I wasn't going to be a professional dancer, but I didn't want to stop dancing. So I thought, well, I'll go to school. And at the same time, I will start having like a middle school competitive dance team. In my area, the middle schools were doing dance, but they weren't competing like the high schoolers were. And that was what I just finished and I loved it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try this and see. So the first year I have 17 kids, 17 girls that come to my parents' backyard. That's where we're practicing. And word kind of picks up. And within 3 years, I have about 100 dancers that are coming for the backyard. And I'm still going to school. I'm still, going to get a degree to get a real job. And thankfully, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So I live here in Wisconsin. And we, as a family business, my family digs basements for houses like that. They're in the construction space. So because I was in that family and they saw what was happening and they saw I was spending $0 on marketing, but our growth was insane. My grandparents, my parents were like, I think you have a business here. Like, I think you could actually do something with this and make this be your career, which sounded just too good to be true. But I took their advice. I decided to start the business while I was still graduating and was going to get my degree, just kind of like a backup plan to see what happens. And the business just started to skyrocket when I finally transitioned it from hobby to business. Now today, even through the pandemic, we have about 1,000 dancers that come to us every single week. Consistently, we've been grossing $1 million a year for several years. We've grown through, the 2008 recession, the pandemic, like we were shut down for 2.5 months, but we did some major pivots and we are coming out of it really strong. So it's just crazy the journey that it has taken, but I do still own and operate. I have 2 locations now actually in the Milwaukee area, but about 5 years ago, I started to teach other small business owners how I was able to grow my business. And that's what's brought me here today.
Wow. Oh, I love so much of that story. And I knew you and I were going to get along because I love dancing. My followers know, like I literally, whenever I can, I break out. It just New Year's, I had my family over and I was like doing like old Zumba routines.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So I love that. That's one of your passions. That's so cool that you created a business and that you still run and operate that business that is so, magical. So
Thank
cool.
you. Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that. And the fact that even like you said, through the recession and now with the pandemic, I honestly, I would love personally, and I'm sure listeners, any listeners now who have a brick and mortar or who want to start a brick and mortar and maybe are scared because of where we are currently. I would love to kind of hear from you, maybe one or two big things that you like. I know that you speak on recession-proof and like really recession-proofing your business. So really, if there's some kind of strategy or tip that you can share with the listeners, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, before we hit this pandemic, I was already preaching, there's another recession coming, like get ready. We've got to plan, we've got to prepare. So I did a podcast in February of 2020, how I was recession proofing my business. And then March, I think 16th, my business was shut down. So it was crazy to see how that happened. But one of the biggest things that I learned through this specific recession, if you want to call it, is that it really doesn't matter what you gross, it matters what you spend and what the profit margin is left over. So we have taken, for the first year in 18 years, we have had less gross revenues this year than the year prior. That has never happened before. So looking at that, I would just assume business is not great. But that's not the case. In fact, we're doing actually a little bit better this time. In January of 2021, we are doing a little bit better than we were January of 2020, pre-COVID. So I think it just goes to show you that you really have to know your numbers. Business is math, right? You don't get to say, I'm not good at math. I've never been good at math. Well, you better get good at math if you want to stay in business, right? So for me, I think the biggest thing was really knowing my numbers and obsessing over my numbers and asking myself, okay, if I'm only going to bring in, if we're keeping 80% of our clients, how do we cut 20% of our expenses and making hard choices and hard decisions? And that was kind of step one. And then really step two was looking at, where is there opportunity here? Where is there a place for growth? Where is there something that we've never thought about doing, but now is the time? So besides dance, a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago-ish, we added music lessons to our studios as well. So not only do we teach dance, but we teach like private piano and voice and guitar and all of that. And I saw very quickly that people did not want virtual dance classes. Like that is not why they sign up for dance. It's social. They want to be with their friends. It's this group environment. But private music lessons, they're okay with it one-on-one, and they were okay with it virtually. So when we saw that, we immediately pivoted, and all summer long, we were creating a digital product of digital piano lessons, learning from home, and having that kind of help diversify us a little bit, right? So I'm not just saying, oh, just, ride it out. You'll be fine. We'll get back to normal. No, the times have changed. We have to really ask ourselves, like, what has 2020 taught us and where are we going to head because of it? And there are definitely some big changes that we've made since COVID has, come into the United States.
Oh, that's so great. And you guys, you thought outside of the box and you capitalized on something that you actually focused in on something, because it sounded like you were already offering that prior, but you weren't really focusing in on it. So it allowed you the opportunity to take that to the next level.
Yeah. And I think too, I kept thinking, I always knew like diversifying is so incredibly important in everything you do, right? So I thought, because I had dance and I had music and we have a state licensed preschool program, I thought that was diversification, which it is in a way. But when you look at it, it's 100% in-person lessons. So it's not very pandemic proof, right? When all of a sudden something has to shut down. And, yes, this is a really rare situation, but who's to say it's not going to come back? Who's to say there's not going to be some sort of another occurrence of something? Now that it's possible to shut down a brick and mortar business, I have to be very crystal clear, knowing that it could happen at any time, and I've got to be prepared for it.
And really what stuck out to me is innovation.
Yeah.
My father is in the real estate industry. And as you know, that can be a very archaic industry in terms of the way that they do things, right?
Yeah.
They want to stick to the tried and true way. My dad is a natural born innovator. He was so excited about I'm saying this, obviously there's a lot of tragedy that happened with the pandemic, of course, but he was excited about the opportunity that it provided for innovation, which is the thing that he's been pushing his company to do. But a lot of them were like, now it was like they had to listen. They had to do something new. And he told me, he was like, Ashley, he's like, I've never made more money in my entire career, which is crazy because my dad's done so well in his career. Even like when I was in high school, I remember him, and he's like, I've never done better. The industry will never be the same in the best way possible. Like they've gotten way more efficient at notary. Like it's all these things that have changed in his company. So, but what really stuck out to me is, yes, innovation, yes, thinking outside of the box, your response, the way that you react, the way that you respond to these unexpected things that we could have never predicted. Right.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I threw myself a pity party. Like I was not excited March 16th or March 13th when we heard like, we may be closing. Okay. I threw a pity party and I owned it. But the second I came out of that, and I did quickly, because you don't get a long time to do that. Right. I had to really ask myself, what am I going to do? How am I going to react? How am I going to start to get to be proactive in our thinking, in the innovation, right? With challenge comes growth, but you don't feel that way when you're in it, when you're keeping your head above water and you're just trying to figure out what this is going to look like. No, I wasn't excited about it in March, but today I'm really grateful for the opportunity to grow in 2020. It has taught me a lot. It has shown my weaknesses, and anything I was upset about was because I wasn't as strong as I needed to be in those areas.
I like to say that 2020 was literally the microscope that we needed. Like it just put everything under everything that was already there, right? Everything that was already there, just spotlight.
Absolutely. It really amplified what was already going on. And for those of us that weren't happy, it's just, a kind of a red flag. It's a warning sign of time to change, time to take this and learn from it and figure out where we want to head in 2021.
Okay, perfect. This is a great segue to go into where I'm excited to go. Okay, so I love that we really addressed that. I haven't addressed it in, I think it's been a while, because I did a podcast with my boyfriend, Gerard Adams, when it was like, had to have been in March, but it was right when it first happened.
Okay.
So I'm happy we got to like now that we're in 2021 and kind of wrapping that up and really, I believe everything touches everything. The way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So it's an opportunity for us to look at what we have and to grow in the areas where we may have neglected in the past.
Yeah.
So moving forward into 2021, I know that you are really passionate about something that I'm really passionate about. And I know my audience is going to love this. So I get a lot of women asking me, saying, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I'm anxious, I have so much on my plate, I have so much to do, and I want to do so much more. Like, what the heck? Like this, how do you get it all done? So, Stacy, I know you're super passionate about this too. Yeah. What is that secret code to getting it all done?
Well, let me tell you, there's not just one answer. I mean, I wrote an entire book on it, so there's a lot we can dive into right now. So let's just go into a couple of these and we can kind of just take it as we go. But I think one of the biggest things that I want to touch on is understanding the difference between perfectionism and high standards, right? So people will look at me, or they'll look at just anybody they look at on social media and they think, I want that business. Like I want to look like that, right? I want that social media account. And they start to get this idea of what we've been creating or how we create it. And then they start to think, this is the goal. I must do this or else I'm a failure. And that is not the case. So I always tell people I have very, very high standards, but I don't wait to put something out until it's perfect. I don't wait to release it to the market or to tell you about it until it's like set in stone, done deal. No, I like to give myself a B+ and go, okay, time to put it out there, right? It doesn't need to be that A+. It doesn't need to be the extra credit. And so many people are waiting to get things done, right? And I will tell you, when you're waiting, when you're feeling stuck, I'm sure a lot of the listeners right now have been in a place before where maybe they felt stuck in 2020. Maybe they felt stuck at a certain time in their life, and you get unstuck by doing. You get unstuck by trying and putting yourself out there and testing things and throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, right? And it's not going to be perfect, but that doesn't mean it's a failure. It doesn't mean that you didn't succeed or you're not getting it all done or you don't have your act together, right? So I really want you to understand that you could have a very messy 2020 and still have done a phenomenal job. And a lot of times we forget to tell ourselves that.
Oh, it's so crazy that you're bringing it, and so perfect that you just said all of that, because I'm reading a book right now. I don't know if you've read it, Brave, Not Perfect.
I haven't.
It's what you just said.
Okay.
And it's been really firing me up because, I mean, come on, listeners, ladies. I mean, we as women, we are natural bred perfectionists, right? We want everything to be perfect. We're actually bred that way. So letting go of perfection is definitely a practice. And as you do it, as you flex that muscle of being like, I forget the author's name right now, I'm blanking, but being brave and going for it anyway, and not worrying about perfection, you'll see like messy action is better than no action. Like we're not moving, right? So I love that you said that. And especially, I'm sure many people after 2020 are feeling stuck. And needed to hear what you just said. So thank you for that, for highlighting that for us. That's
and one more thing too, because I know we think we have to get it all done, right? The secret to getting it all done is being selective with what you choose to get done, right? The secret to doing this is really asking yourself, like, what moves the needle? When I sit down and I'm feeling overwhelmed, and that happens. I mean, I have a lot on my plate. I have multiple businesses. Trust me, I feel overwhelmed quite a few like times, but I sit there and I think, but what has to get done today? What will make a difference in my business if I do this? What will move the needle by doing this? And if I can't find an answer, if I'm like, well, I don't know what that result's going to be, I don't know what that's going to do for me, then it gets pushed to the side and I start to prioritize the biggest things that are going to give me the biggest bang for my buck.
Yes. Okay. That feeling of overwhelm, that feeling of stress, anxiety, it's because we're looking at all the things all at once. And we're like, and not only the big things, the little things, all the things. And that's what's causing this state of overwhelm, because then we're like, oh my God, I have all this stuff I need to do. So do you have like a methodology? And I heard you say kind of, which is actually very similar to mine, eat the frog first, right? Which is meaning like, get that one big thing you've been avoiding done. And you talked about the one thing that moves that needle. But when you do have, someone who's writing down their to-do list and they start to feel that overwhelm, like what's the one thing that they need to do now?
Yeah. So looking at your to-do list, it's funny, especially as a woman, it'll be like, buy bread, write a book. Like it's like the little things. And then like this massive year-long project on the same list. Okay. Please don't do that. Like what I want you to do is I want you to start to ask yourself, like, what are things that need to be done now? And what are things that you love, but you need to love it for later and put it in a parking lot? So I have a lot of what I call parking lots where I just park these ideas. So I'm involved in masterminds and group coaching programs, and just, I'll be on an amazing podcast like right now with you, and you'll say something. I'm like, oh, I love it. Is it a right now, or is it a put it in the parking lot for later, right? Just because you have a great idea and it's working well for you doesn't mean I have to completely sidetrack what I'm doing in my business, right? Like you said before, what you do, like how you do anything is how you do everything. If you're going to stop what you're doing to now do what somebody else just said they're going to do, and you're always starting but not finishing, you're not going to get the results you're looking for, right? So the more you can say, ooh, Ashley, this is amazing, right? This is a great idea. Okay, go find your parking lot, put it in a Trello board, put it in your project management software, whatever you use, just go put it down. Just don't put it on today's to-do list, because that is what people do. Or they'll put it on a calendar like, oh, I'll do that Friday. I'll do that Friday. I'll do that Friday. Or the best part is when people think like, oh, I'll do that on the first of the month. And in their Google Calendar, they go to the first of the month and it's like everything they think they're going to do in a day. And it's really for like the next year or two. So I think just really understanding, like, is this the priority right now, and taking an assessment. So I love to take an assessment every 90 days. I look at my calendar, I look at my bank account, right? I start to analyze and assess, like, what was a good use of my time? What lights me up? What do I
Mm-hmm.
dread? If I sit down at my computer and I go into my calendar and I just think, ugh, this is my day, I immediately ask, what do I not like about it? How can I
Yes.
do less of what I'm dreading and more of what lights me up and more of what excites me?
Okay, I have a literal I have a process for this.
Okay.
I require every member on my team to take an audit. So it's an audit of literally everything that you do from on a
Mhm.
day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And they do it once every quarter, and
Okay.
they go through, and there's a ranking system. So you're ranking your enjoyment level. Another really great thing to rank on is it your highest and best use?
Mm.
Ladies, we are like we're guilty of this all the time, where we just want to do it all because we don't trust somebody else to do it as good as we do. There's the
Right.
perfectionist coming in again, rearing its head, right? And the third one is skill level. So you have
Mm.
skill, enjoyment, which you talked about too, and then the
Yeah.
highest and best use. And then you either decide to eliminate, delegate, or automate it. And eliminating is I don't know. I mean, I have so many questions about what you just said.
Yeah.
But when someone identifies that they don't enjoy something, right, and it really
Yeah.
drains them of their energy, what are your next steps for that person? What do you coach your clients into doing?
Yeah. And first, I love the way you audit. I audit differently. So I'm going to swipe some of that. So I appreciate you sharing your version of that for sure. Um, so I think some of the things that I do, because when I do my audit, I kind of ask myself as a CEO, is it strategic or is it tactical? Okay. So when I say tactical, I kind of think like anybody on my team could do it. I could delegate it. So I'm trying to remove the tactical and keep strategic because that is where my zone of genius lies, right? So I think the biggest thing for you to ask yourself is where is your zone of genius? Where should you be pouring your time and energy? Like, what does that look like for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question is if it is something like if you said to me, like you wanted to remove something off your plate, more like CEO visionary work, right? I wouldn't necessarily say to you, yes, go give the vision to somebody else. That is something that should be on the CEO's plate. We've got to figure out why you don't enjoy it, how you can start to enjoy it, and maybe figure out a mentor or a book or something to inspire you to go, ooh, I can do it this way. This
Mm-hmm.
feels right for me. This makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Now, that to me, as long as you're keeping the things on your plate that you should be, and then you've got the tactical type stuff where you're like, well, somebody else could run my Facebook ads. Somebody else could post on social media. Somebody else could, yes, 100%. But the question when you start to ask yourself, like, should I delete this? Should I get it off my plate completely? Before you even go there, ask yourself, like, have you fully maximized it before you've decided it doesn't work? So if somebody comes to me and they're like, "Oh, I'm quitting YouTube. It doesn't actually work for my business." Half the time I'm like, "No, no, no, you're just not working it. You don't know how to do YouTube well, so that's why it's not working for you." But don't say YouTube doesn't work, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm like, "Slow down. Let's assess, should this have been on somebody else's plate for them to go in with their zone of genius and blow it up, right? Before you
Yeah.
just assessing like, oh, it's time to get rid of it." So I love looking at like where is, like you said, the best use of your time. What lights you
Mm-hmm.
up? What excites you? Now, good news is that sometimes there are things on your to-do list that you can get rid of that will not make a difference. You think you have to be
Yeah.
doing it. You think you
True.
have to post and on one of these platforms every day, every hour, whatever it is. And really if you stop doing it, it wouldn't make a difference, right? So there are some things when you get to say, you know what? No, that strategy is no longer effective. We don't need to do that anymore and remove it. So you've got to start to really just take assessments nonstop.
You know what? So I inspired you, and then you hit me right back, and you inspired me, Stacy, because I was like, ooh, that's a good ranking. Like it's really a needle. What do you call it? A needle rank? Like what moves the needle the
Yeah.
most? Like you can
Yeah.
rank that. Like because you just said there's things that we do that really like you take it off, and it's really not moving the needle either way.
Yeah.
So that's a really good ranking system too. I would write that down, guys listening right now. If you are looking at, hey, how can I optimize myself? How can I
Mhm.
optimize my time in 2021? That's another great way to rank it. How critical is this to moving the
Yeah.
needle in your business?
Yeah.
So I love that. I have another question for you. And you said
Yeah.
you were talking about this earlier. We kind of alluded, but I would love to know, because this is a controversial question. Do you believe that it's okay to focus on more than one thing at a time?
This is a controversial question.
It is. It
So,
totally is.
okay.
I've heard all kinds of views on this.
Yeah. So I do believe in having a one thing that you are hyper focused on. But the bigger your team is, the more you get to be diversified. So if I have 5 leaders on my team, they all have their own one thing for the quarter. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
if you're a one woman show, yes, you better believe hyper focused, very little on your to-do list. The bigger you get, the more you get to focus on and do.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I love that. That's a really simple, straightforward way to put it, because I can say that totally rings true for me, because when I first started out with my business, I was a one woman show. And whenever I would try to do a lot of things at once, I really found myself not effective at all. And I would do you know Shanda Sumter? I feel like
I know of her. Yes.
Okay. Well, early on, we had a conversation. She literally told me, she's like, Ashley, you're having shiny object syndrome. Like, stay focused. And I'm like, all right, got it. Okay. But now you're right. Now I'm in a totally different position. I have a whole team to support me. Like, I would have, like, if I was a one woman show, there's so much that my team's currently doing that I would not be doing, because I know it wouldn't be effective.
And then that's where it kind of stinks for people that are watching us with teams that are one woman shows that, oh, I got to do this and I got to do that. It's like, I would never do half this stuff if I was still single by myself doing this alone. So that's where you have to ask yourself, what is the best use of your time right now, or collectively with your team? And then, like I said before, when you have a bigger team, each of my leaders own a project for 90 days. So I can't personally own 6 projects, but if I have 6 leaders and they each own one and it's their baby, they're going to get done, and someone's going to be held accountable, and they will get it at the end of that quarter. So that makes a big difference too, when somebody can take ownership of those specific things. One tip that I will share too, with our focus, because we have a larger team and we're all working on possibly different things, but there is one unifying goal. So we have a critical number in our business that we track on a daily basis. And it's like, no matter who you are in the business or what you do, or if you're marketing or sales or you're in operations, no matter what you do, the critical number is the most important number in the entire business. And for us, it's the number of active, meaning like paying clients that we have in our group coaching program. So we know every day how many we currently have and what the goal is by the end of the year. We are all striving for that number, no matter who we are in the business. Because think, if you're in operations, you may be in collections, you may be making sure the credit cards go through, because we don't care if you signed a contract, but you're not paying, right? If you're in marketing, we need the leads to help us get that number, right? So there's so many things in fulfillment, retention. So everybody kind of heads back to that critical number. And that has been a game changer for us this year.
Because then you're all heading in the same direction, and you guys have different roles in getting to that number, but that it really unifies the team. I love that. I really, really love that. Okay. So I'm guessing, and I love that actually this question I'm about to ask applies really whether you have a business that you're running or not, because either way, whether you're running a business or you're running your household, right? It's one or the other. Systems. Let's talk about this because I'm super passionate about it. Is this one of your secrets to getting it all done?
For sure.
I figured.
Yes, I am obsessed with systems, and I know people have this tendency to believe that systems just mean structure and like it's like chaining you down, but systems give you freedom, right? Systems allow you to take a vacation and have the business run on its own, like a well-oiled machine, making money without you. So it's the opposite of what people think it really truly is. So one of the things that if I'm coaching somebody and they have a frustration, I'll immediately say, okay, well, pause. What's the system for this? And there's usually not one, right? Or if they say like, well, somebody's upset and they want a refund. I'm like, okay, well, what's the system? There is a system, right? It's like, well, is the system that you would jump on a call with this person to work through it first? Is the system that you would show them the contract? Would you, right? You have to figure this out. If somebody's unhappy, do you want to charge them? Do you want to reimburse them? Do you want to, right? There's not a right answer here. It's what do you want to do? And then how do you put that system into place so that when it happens again, you don't have to ask this question. The team doesn't have to ask you. You get to do it. Now, systems are still important, even if you're a solo entrepreneur, because you want consistency. If somebody asks for a refund, you say no, then their friend asks for a refund and you give it to them. Customers talk, right?
Yeah.
And
so
they
true.
do not like inconsistency, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure that even as a solo entrepreneur, you start to put systems in place. So when you hire, it's easier to delegate things because you can say, this is the system for what happens when somebody asks for a refund.
Yes. Amen, sister. Okay. So we have standard operating procedures, right? So standard, it literally is, it's so funny because I just had a conversation with Marge, she's like, I call her Sergeant Marge in charge. She's my OBM, my online business manager. And there was something that happened, right? An error, a mistake that was made. I didn't say, what's wrong with you? I said, what's wrong with the system? What do we get to fix in the system to ensure that this does not happen again? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's never, this is a key thing is if you are currently running a team or you want to run a team, knowing that when an error happens, it's not a person's fault, it's the system's fault.
Yes.
And yes, there are exceptions to where, yes, someone's not a fit for your company, et cetera, et cetera. However, when you have a checklist that is to the T, you know, when, for example, with Marge, it was an email communication situation. And I said, hey, this checklist, we need to add that in the checklist so that now when you're going through and doing this one task, you have bam, 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 check, 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 what gets to be done in that process, right? So I'm absolutely in 100% alignment and agreement with you on that. And okay, let's take it to the woman who's listening right now, who isn't running a team, who isn't running a business. Maybe she wants to someday. Let's give an example of like a household system, because I think it's really interesting because you can apply it anywhere.
Yes.
Maybe, what's your example that you have?
So I will say that I am probably crazier than most, but I do have systems for my house and I have rhythms and routines for my house, right? So if you're going to be a really successful entrepreneur, it's exhausting to have to run a household and run a business, right? So to put systems in place will make it so much easier for you. So I could go on like a million different ways, but I'll just give a few examples. So finding rhythms and routines of either like, especially this too. What did I say before? What is the frustration? If you're like, I always open up the fridge and there's never anything to eat. Okay. So there needs to be a system for that. I don't ever have an empty refrigerator because in my Google Calendar, 2 different days of the week, it'll literally say order online groceries today, right? So Tuesday morning, it's like order online groceries. And then I think it's like Friday morning, order online groceries. So it prompts me, it triggers me to place that order, right? So that would be a system. If you're like, laundry's always piling up. Well, I know I do my laundry every single Saturday morning, not my kids' laundry, just my laundry. So like, I know when things are getting done and finding in like, when is it going to fit on my calendar to not be frustrated that, oh shoot, I don't have time to go to the grocery store. I don't have time to do the laundry. If you're putting it in and scheduling it in, you'll have a lot less frustrations. So if you're somebody that has like, I'm making this up, but like the junk drawer is just like out of control, it's always like overflowing, then you may need a system of doing it one time, like spend time this weekend, clean it out. And then every 90 days, put a calendar reminder, go do some maintenance on the junk drawer, right?
Yeah.
So that a year from now, you're not like pulling out things that you didn't even know you had in there, right? So it's a lot of times of there's initial work in the beginning, but then what is the maintenance to keep the system going? Because even in your business, you know, Marge is in charge of that system. She owns it. But at home, you may be in charge of lots of this stuff, right? And that's okay. So if you're in charge, what is the trigger or the reminder to help you stay in maintenance mode to get it all done?
And I love that you just listed a really important tool, which is Google Calendar. Whatever calendar you use, I prefer Google Calendar, just saying. But having those you can set repeating. I'm hoping you guys knew this, but you can set repeating events in your calendar. Also, what I like to use is on your handy dandy phone, the Apple reminders. So I had this situation where my father, and this is when I was actually visiting him, but we kept it going after I left. He would forget to take his lean shake, and I was trying to help him get healthier, right? And my dad doesn't have systems. Luckily, he has a daughter who has systems. So I was like, I would have this reminder, call dad when I wasn't there, or if I was there, remind dad to take a shake. And every time I did it, he would take a shake, and he didn't forget to take a shake every day. Right. So little things like that can be supportive. And then also roles. If you're sharing a household, like me and my boyfriend, Gerard, we have very specific things that I do and I'm in charge of, and very specific things that he does and he's in charge of. For example, the trash going out on Sunday evening so that it's picked up on Monday mornings. There's a literally reminder he has to his phone to do that every Sunday, so we don't miss that, right? So things like that, it's not just these, and I want to share a quick platform. I want to know if you have any tools too. But a platform that I'm obsessed with, that I love, is Asana. And I know sometimes people tell me I'm saying that wrong, but I don't care, because that's how I've said it for the last 3 years. But Asana is a tool. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I think you're saying it right. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Okay. Someone told me it's asana. I'm like, I don't like that at all.
I've always said Asana, so I don't know.
Okay,
maybe
great.
we're both saying it wrong. I have no idea.
Yeah. So what I love about that is you can set repeating tasks. And even today, I had a client who, like, as you guys know, I build websites. My team and I were an agency. We build websites. And one of my clients said, hey, can we come back? I need to talk with you at the end of the month because we're doing such and such and such. And I said, okay, great. So right away, that was put into an Asana task that's set to come up and pop at the top of my task list at the end of the month. So what I love about Asana is it's also repeating tasks, and that's my workstation. That's where I work. So I love using that as a really great tool for accountability for anyone who struggles with accountability. Asana, I can't tell you, that's done wonders for me. Do you have any tools, Stacey, that you
I use Monday.com. I mean, it's another project management software, but that's what we use, and it's great with the team. And that's kind of where we communicate as well as do projects and tasks.
Yeah. So guys, that's just it. So they're both task management softwares. Another one I've heard of, Trello, is also really good. Different strokes for different folks. You know what I'm saying? So it just really depends on your preference.
Yep.
But those are really great tools for anyone who struggles with managing their tasks and accountability, and who wants something to use for your team. Those are great tools. So what other productivity tools do you use, Stacey?
I try not to go too crazy. Like, my goal is to stay a little bit more minimalist in what I'm doing, because the more you add, right? So somebody listening might be like, I'm going to get Asana and Monday. You probably don't need both.
No, you don't.
You're going to pick one and you're going to stick with it. So besides Google Calendar and Monday.com and Voxer, I am not in anything else. Like, that is it. I'm in those three things. I stay lean because I think we can make it overcomplicated. And then if I'm telling you set a Google Calendar reminder, but you don't go into Google Calendar ever, the reminder will not be effective, right? So you might, like, it depends who you are or what you do or how you do this. So my husband's not somebody who's going to be on Google Calendar, right? But if I want him to see something every time he goes in the refrigerator, or let's say the kitchen or the bathroom, right? I could literally put a Post-it note on the inside of the bathroom cabinet that says refill, or take out trash every Sunday, or refill whatever I need to, right?
Yes.
So ask yourself, like, what is the trigger you can put in place that will be effective for you? So if that's putting your tennis shoes by your bed in the morning so that you put your workout clothes on, great. If you're somebody who closes your eyes when you wake up and you walk right to the bathroom and you're not even going to see your shoes, then that's not going to work for you, right?
Yes.
So you really have to ask yourself, like, what is going to be the thing to remind me? I will never remember to take my vitamins. So my vitamins are sitting right out on my island in a little container that I can't miss it. My husband hates that it sits there, but I'm like, I need the trigger or I will never take these vitamins, right? So you have to figure out what works for you.
Those environmental cues are huge. Highly recommend listeners right now, think about that. Is there any habit, especially it's 2021, new year, what habits did you not do last year that you get to do this year? And what environmental cues, Post-it notes, setting them right in an obvious location that you see every day, that you can do, and triggers that you can create in your environment to support you in creating that habit. Habit stacking is another really great way to do that, right? Atomic Habits. I don't know if you read that book.
Yeah, I did.
So good, right? He talks about habit stacking, where basically you take one thing that you do every single day and you stack something else. That's the cue, right? And then you stack something else right after it that you get to do, that you need to do.
Yes.
So I love that. That's so good. Okay, Stacey, you've delivered so much value during this episode. We're nearing the end here. I just want to ask you, is there any other thing that you were like about to say that maybe you want to leave the listeners with that you didn't
Yeah,
get to?
I'll say this because we've talked a lot about a lot of really cool stuff that we could be doing, but they're very simple, but sometimes it's not easy, right? And there's a difference between simple and easy. And
Mm,
a lot of these new habits or just new things that you're going to be putting into place in the beginning, it's a lot of manual work. It's going to take a little bit more time to get it going, but
yeah.
pretty soon that manual will turn into automation. You won't even think about taking your vitamins because you've done it every day. You know what I mean? Like you won't even think about having to do that thing, post on Instagram. Like it will naturally come to you. So I think just understand that we're trying to form something new and pretty soon it will come very natural to you.
That's a really good tip. And I think that's a very, very important point of clarification to make, because there is that upfront work that ends up paying off big
Yes.
time in the long run. I've had one of my past clients said, well, I don't want to hire someone to do this because it's going to take time for me to train them. And that's going to take away. I'm like, girl, I'm like, think about how much time it's going to save you. And remember, you're not training them, you're creating SOPs here.
Yes.
Because it's not them, it's what you're creating that they get to do for you. That pays off big time in the long run. So that's a really great point to make, that you can really kick off this new year with, you guys, is really starting to build out those systems for yourself, starting to build out these triggers, all the things that we talked about, using a tool that will support you if you haven't used any. We listed a few options that you can see which one is right for you. So I love it all. Okay. So Stacy, I do ask every female on fire. Right now I'm in a series called Female on Fire, which I decided to extend. I was only going to do 11 episodes, but oh my gosh, golly, has it been fun to jam out with some females on fire on this podcast. So I ask every female, what is something about you? And this is a personal share, so I know we've been very business talk here. What's something that you used to hide or dim or mute about yourself that you have since reactivated and reignited on your journey to being the female on fire that you clearly are today?
Yeah, it's so funny because, on social media, half the people are posting things and bragging and putting stuff out there that making their life look better. And a lot of female entrepreneurs, we make our life look a little worse on social media sometimes than it really is. We're trying to dim what's going on and what we bought and where we've gone on vacation and all of the things. And as somebody who owns a brick and mortar, that was really hard for me because I have to pull in the parking lot with my car. I walk in the building, you see my purse, right? Like there are so many things where it was very different having a brick and mortar than an online. You don't see my car online. You don't know what purse I'm carrying, around. And I think for me, I would wear a different purse. I would think about the car that I was buying and what that looked like. And I remember in one of my masterminds, my friend was like, you got to like get out of this funk. And he said to me, so like picture the person who is going to say something to you. Like somebody will say something. So who's going to be that person? I'm like, oh, okay, I'm picturing her. And he's like, okay, so she's going to say something. If you're driving a nice car, you're wearing a nice purse, or you're doing all the things, right? What is she going to say when you lose the business or you go bankrupt? Is she going to be supportive and nice, or is she going to still say something not nice about you? And it was like the biggest aha of like, you're right. The people that are supporting me when I show the good things will support me when I have to show the bad things. And the people that are going to be rude or negative or condescending will always be that way. So why am I trying to please them or, show them what they want to see when they're not here for me? And that was just a couple years ago. So, I mean, I'm talking like a decade and a half of me like battling this, like hiding who I was in my building versus who I was outside and what I could share and show. And after seeing that, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be me. And I've worked really hard. And if I want to have a nice purse or a nice car or whatever, take a nice vacation with my kids, I've earned that because I'm paying for it. So that was the biggest like, wow, I wish I would have heard that 10 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. What a freeing feat. Like that, you literally freed yourself to be your fullest self-expression. It's literally your self-expression.
Yeah.
I love that one. I'm sure so many women listening were nodding their heads as I was. I think the whole time I was like, yes, I totally relate to that. And it's actually such a classic move. To be honest, a lot of women do that. We start to downplay. I had Mel, I don't know if you know Mel Wells. I had her on my podcast and she and I we had coffee in London together one time. And she was sharing how she went friendship after friendship, always feeling like she had to kind of shrink and she had to kind of dim. And I've been that way too, where like you're afraid to share a big win because you know what I'm saying? So I love that we're ending it there too, because it's as every woman and man, well, I have mostly women listening right now, as you grow, because believe me, you're gonna, as you evolve, as you ascend and elevate on this journey, you are going to have people fall away that needed to fall away. Just trust that. Trust that when you're true to yourself, everything true will come to you. So, I mean, that's one of my biggest things. We as women, we want to be people pleasers and we want to please everybody. And in that, we're not pleasing anybody, especially ourselves. We become unhappy and unfulfilled and exhausted because we're living a lie. And it's exhausting to be something you're not, you know? Oh, so good. I love that one. No one's shared that one so far. So thank you for that, Stacey.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, this has been so fun. I had a good feeling about you. I had a good feeling about this episode with you. This was just like flowed seamlessly. I'm going to put all the things for the listeners to go follow you. So I'm going to put your Instagram so they can go follow you there. I'm going to put your website, all the things. Is there anything presently that you have that you'd want to share with the listeners that I can put in there?
I would just say the Foot Traffic podcast. I talk a lot about marketing, implementation, taking action. You can find some good stuff there. Otherwise, everywhere at Stacy Tuschl on social.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stacey, for coming on and sharing such amazing wisdom with our audience. I so enjoyed all of it. I'm sure they did too. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Such a fun conversation.